there's a formula to it. A very simple formula. Everybody's a suspect. It's a statement on modern society. Ooh, ain't modern society awful?
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Welcome back to the Cabin Night Podcast. I'm Jake.
I'm James.
And I'm Rob.
And today we are going to be discussing what could potentially be a controversial subject. Art from the artist. And is it possible to separate the two? But before we get into that, I'd like to invite you to grab a drink, make yourselves comfortable and enjoy the discussion. So, art from the artist. We've had a couple of big things happen, certainly within the world of music over recent years. Not just within metal or rock or anything like that, but in wider sort of more popular music as well, with such as Michael Jackson. I suppose maybe for clarity, we're not necessarily here to say whether someone is guilty, unless they are guilty.
Yeah.
Ian Watkins.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what it's a good launch pad as any. Let's go in hard. Let's start with Ian Watkins and.
Okay, we're not messing about this one, are we?
we're not easing into this one. I get background. Ian Watkins, lead singer of a band called The Lost Prophets, very popular mid 2000s, and he was arrested, charged, and found guilty for a number of
horrible things.
Horrendous things.
Horrible.
It seems like his time in prison's not necessarily helped, because the stories you hear coming out from his, it doesn't sound like he's a changed man in the slightest. But yeah, so where do you stand on that?
Well, Ian Watkins, perfectly on his throat.
It's a weird one because I loved Lost Prophets when they first came out. First two albums I thought were great. As they got later, looking back in hindsight, it become more apparent the things that he made, like the video. Is it a song called Hypocrisy?
Yeah, the video.
Where they take off Blue Peter and Rainbow and all them sorts of things. And
I feel like with that was more coincidence. I don't think he was hiding in plain sight. But it's kind of looking back now. It's like, ooh, that's not good.
It's aged poorly.
It's aged very poorly. Yeah. But very poorly.
My stance on Ian Watkins is I like Lost Prophets. The music is good regardless of what he did. It didn't affect the music. If he was to do something, if he was to come out of prison, changed man, do something again, music-wise, I wouldn't buy that. I wouldn't give him the benefit.
But that's interesting. Again, another point. I mean, it's like, but if someone has gone to prison and done their time, and they are remorseful and repentant. Thank you. They're the two words so mixed together for what they've done. At the end of the day, they were. I'm not saying Ian Watkins, but they've gone to prison. They were given a punishment for their crime. Yeah. They have served their punishment. Can't just mean they can move on. I'm not saying Ian Watkins can, because he's obviously showing no remorse. Yeah. And he's blatantly still doing it, or trying to at least.
Yeah, at least.
So yeah, I know the different thing, but if he was to come on this side, I feel like I might be more willing to, simply because you pay. This is the whole point of the justice system. And again, I know it's difficult for him because he's not wanting to, but if someone else, it's a bit difficult. But I agree with what you're saying about.
Okay, for want of a better word or a better sentence, the youngest child he tried to groom was from her parents, and the baby wasn't much older than Clara.
No, I know what you're saying. What he did
as a new dad.
That's what I'm saying. I know what Ian Watkins is a bit of a different thing, because it was so horrendous.
It's a weird one to start with, because you've got the double factor of the fact that he's clearly unrepentant, but also the level of what he did. Because
it was evil what he did. Yeah, there's no way about that.
That's not just somebody who thought it would. Like we'll end up talking about Witch Tripper on this to a degree.
Yeah. Yes, I do want to talk to you about that, because I don't know much of what's happened.
So what?
And
Richie
Green, what they called the other band that. Similar time to Witch Tripper that come out, they were a metal band that were playing.
Oh, was it?
There was another band at a similar time. I'll try and find it.
Let's go back. We're already jumping ahead to several tangents.
Yeah. So Richie, was the lead singer of a band called Witch Tripper, who I'd seen a few times, and massive fan. They got 2 albums out, and I loved them. I was obsessed.
Yeah.
As you know, I met Richie at Bloodstock. Seemed like an absolutely lovely dude, but it was literally like 3 or 4 months ago. Witch Tripper had actually gone on hiatus during lockdown, and the reasons given were, we've toured a lot, we're burnt out, plus it's not a viable thing for us to do financially at the minute, seeing as we can't perform at the minute because of lockdown and blah, blah, blah. So they'd actually not been operating as a band for some time. And then I noticed last year that Chris and the drummer had started a new band.
So it's Chris the bassist?
Chris is the bassist and the drummer. And they'd started a new band with a different lead singer, and I thought to myself, no, there must have been some disagreement, they couldn't agree on getting back together or whatever. And then a couple of months after that, then it broke in Mansfield sort of newspapers that that Richie, the lead singer, had in a position of power as a guitar teacher been abusive of that position. But the thing that he was actually charged for was a blues festival in which I believe he was performing at as a solo artist, because obviously Rich Tripper had ceased to be at this point. It actually got 2 girls high on cocaine, underage girls, and assaulted them both while they were unconscious.
I didn't know any of this.
He assaulted one of them with a bottle, and not in the sense that you would normally bottle somebody. They were both underage at the time, 115, 114.
Fucking hell.
Were they not overage by the time they went to court?
By the time they went to court, they were both. One of them was 16, the other one was still 15.
Yeah.
But, I mean, irrelevant.
Yeah, no. What he did was still...
Yeah.
Even if they were overage, what he did was still...
Yeah, it's still abuse.
Yeah.
So, looping it back to the conversation we were having, obviously on nowhere near a level that those girls felt, but I felt betrayed. I felt, considering how much I loved that band and the music that they produced, I would have followed that band no matter what they did forever.
Yeah, because you were a massive fan.
Really into them. I felt so. For that reason, I will never listen to Witch Tripper again.
Really, they're now done. Even though Witch Tripper's, again, like Lost Prophets, it's more than one person.
Despite that, and I will support Cinco Lima, which is Chris's new band, who are playing Bloodstock this weekend. At the time of recording,
tickets, please.
At the time of recording, Cinco Lima, I'll support them because Chris, an absolutely sound dude. But yeah, I because of it felt personal. It weren't, obviously. That's a silly way of thinking about it, but it felt because I carried a torch for this band for a long time.
Yeah.
And to hear this, it disgusts me. Half Pint, he's just chucked his shirts away. I'm going to burn mine. I'm going to burn mine because it's not good enough to just chuck them in bin. They need burning.
Shit. I didn't know any of this about this shit. I knew they called it. I knew something had happened. I didn't know there was this. Fucking hell.
Yep.
So that's it.
So that means
they're dead.
You won't ever listen to Lost Prophets again then?
I mean, I never listened to Lost Prophets anyway.
See, for me, Lost Prophets, some songs were a big part of me getting into music. And, like, certain songs like Last Train Home,
Fakes on the Progress,
Rooftop, Fakes on the Progress.
Yeah,
they remind me of me, starting to find my personality, like, as a young teenager. So they do still remind me of those times. I still struggle to listen to. They're on a couple of my playlists. But I still struggle to listen to them.
I don't necessarily think I would go, I don't want to do today. I want to listen to Lost Prophets.
Yeah.
I would listen to the songs that I liked and I've always liked. I don't think I would. I don't think I'd ever say I'd never listen to them.
Because it's kind of like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's everything's going right. All gone now. All done.
It's akin to lying to yourself, isn't it? Really, you can't say just your knowledge of what this person's gone on to do. Don't change the fact that you like that music. And
it's harder to admit it, I think, with some of these things.
I mean, going down that route, because it makes much more sense now to start this conversation. The Phil Anselmo thing, the supposed white power thing.
Yeah,
I will not, and I appreciate what the white power symbol that he did, because he did do it.
Yes, this footage is him doing it,
regardless of whether he says it wasn't or was or whatever it was or it was a joke. It was a white power thing. It was a Nazi thing. It will not stop me listening to Pantera. He's done it before and kind of got away with it. He's done it this time and kind of got away with it again.
I mean, he said it must be 6-7 years ago. This happened now.
Oh yeah.
The whole with Rob Flynn.
Yeah.
You know,
There were Rob Flynn, there were Scott Ian. Everybody chimed in. The one instance that I did, he did his first interview after that event, and he did it with Eddie Trunk on Eddie Trunk's podcast. And to me, to quote somebody I don't know very much, Shakespeare, it sounded like he doth protest too much. I had a black friend as a kid. I had loads of friends.
I hate. Yeah.
And I just thought, well,
It
can't be me because of this. And
I do find his explanation later on to be...
What, the whole white wine thing?
No, not that.
That was the initial one.
Was it the first one?
We're all drinking white wine backstage, and that was
we said
we called it white power. That was his explanation.
Yeah, that's
Which, if
stupid.
it was, that's...
I mean, it's still a bit weird.
It's still a dodgy symbol to make.
Yeah.
I find an interview that I read with him later on when he was asked about that, he said, look, it's as simple as this. It was an ill-advised, stupid, ridiculous, insulting, offensive thing to do, and I'm not trying to hide behind anything. I'm not trying to convince anybody. I am just going to say that it were a joke, and I'm not a racist, despite it being the shittiest kind of joke I could have told. And I kind of appreciated that a little bit because it weren't too much of a, oh, please believe me.
Yeah.
I'm not racist. It was more of a, yeah, we're fucking stupid. I agree with you.
Wholeheartedly.
Here's what it is. I'm not racist.
I did it. I can't help it. I've done it now, kind of thing. I mean, Down, Pantera, Phil Anselmo and the Illegals. Most of the stuff he's been in, I listen to on quite a regular basis, and while it depends on where your line is. I appreciate what the Nazis did was horrible for a lot of people. Now, that symbol doesn't carry the weight that it used to.
I think it's been used a lot for shock
Well,
value.
which symbol? The salute?
The Nazi salute.
Right.
It doesn't carry the meaning it used to, because when you...
I would argue it does. I would argue it's possible.
But he's not going to go out and do all that, is he?
We don't know.
It might.
I'm thinking not the kind of like, well, you never know.
No.
I don't know, Phil.
But I still think what Watkins did was by far worse.
Yeah, it's actual physical.
Well, yeah, it's physical harm. Yeah.
And until it comes out that Phil's done these things, if he has actually followed his
genocide.
yeah, I don't think he will. I don't think he's. Not there. I think he's. Anybody's perfectly capable of these things if they want to do them, but I don't know. I don't think for me that's not on the same level, because that, whether it were a silly thing, whether he meant it or not, he's not carried out the rest of the actions.
It doesn't forgive what he's done.
No,
but
he's not.
If you're going to rank levels of arsehole, see, and that's a good way to lead into a question I want to ask about Metallica and. You've got the absolute worst of the worst, which is what Ian Watkins did, and you've got like the next level of sort of ignorance, which Phil was guilty of. Next level up from that would be just general arseholery. So Lars is not a particularly nice person, from what you can see. But then you've got James Hetfield, who's into his hunting and trophy killings and things like that. So it's. We all would quite happily continue listening to Metallica, and do.
Yeah. They're still possibly my favourite band.
But that links into, as of time of recording, there is reports starting to circle about people trying to the term cancel Metallica.
Yeah. I saw a meme actually in recent days. It goes back to the gatekeeping episode. Stranger Things fans have asked Metallica fans. A guy walked out wearing his Metallica t-shirt, and Stranger Things fans asked him to name 3 episodes of Stranger Things.
That was quite funny. Yeah,
that was good.
It's the same thing, and it makes perfect sense because you are into that. Metallica now are Stranger Things.
Yeah, they're linked into that. But do you agree with something that something they've said or done? Because I don't know what in particular they're trying to cancel them for. But do you agree with the whole you've done or said this in your past, even though you're a completely different person now, you've done that, and thus you cannot have a career? I personally think it's a fucking stupid. I think cancel
culture.
As it has been, I hate the term, and I'm only using it because it is the vernacular that everybody is using. But the idea of cancel culture is stupid. Because what you're doing then is saying that no one can evolve and no one can grow. You've said this when you were 15, and thus now you're 45. You must have the same vision. You cannot grow. You cannot change.
You're also saying that anything that person did, good or bad, now no longer exists.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Jimmy Savile. He did a lot of good things.
Charity-wise, yeah.
He might have done it for his own sordid purpose, but he still did good. He still did
the effects of
charity
what
stuff.
he did. Yeah.
I think a better
At his
analogy
heart-
to use would be a TikTok influencers going
Yeah.
out onto the street with a bag full of sandwiches and recording themselves
Yeah.
handing sandwiches out
Yeah.
to homeless people.
Yeah, because they're doing
It's a
it
good
for,
thing, but they're doing it purely for
Yeah.
their own
Yeah.
gain.
Yeah.
Let's not add
Yeah,
sexual
because
assault of
again,
children into the...
yeah, because Jimmy
No,
Savile
no, no,
again
but
is a
you-
different
but-
case altogether.
But you can't deny that he raised money.
But I do think that it's a bit different with Jimmy Savile because there was no separating his art from what he did. Because
No.
what he did
It was
was
everything.
in and of his
Yeah, and have you
abuse.
watched a documentary on
Yeah.
Netflix? Fucking hell, that's bad.
It's
Exactly,
terrifying.
he was horrendous.
Terrifying.
Everything he did was for political motive.
There's one bit in that documentary which just fucking opened my eyes completely. He's in the hospital, I think it was Leeds Hospital he were in, and he's doing an interview.
That girl.
No, not that one. That was just terrible on its own. Why she drew the picture.
Yeah.
And so what have I ever done to you? Everything.
Everything.
There were one where but this one he was joking about. So he's
But this is hiding in plain sight, which is what we do.
yeah he explained. So they asked him, "Oh, what do you do here?" And he said, "Oh, you know, I assist. I'm a porter. I move people around. I usually move the boys around, but sometimes when they're not looking, I move the girls around as well." And they were right happy about it, right? And I just think, you fucking sick man.
Yeah.
Looking back, it's terrible.
This was allowed to go on.
But this was allowed to. But the BBC endorsed him for God knows how long.
But again, hiding in plain sight, and this isn't a defence
Yeah.
of it, but it was a different culture back then.
Yeah,
And this
no, I
isn't a
know.
defence of it in the fucking slightest.
No,
But
if
that's how he got away with it. 'cause
If
the
you
culture
cancel
allowed
Jimmy
it.
Savile, you are then saying that the good he did, regardless of what agenda he had on his own plate at the time, was
But
no
would,
good.
But would it be acceptable to do away with the charity work he did in favour of those children not being abused? I'd say.
Oh, yeah,
every
yeah.
fucking time.
Again, because you can in that respect,
You
again,
can separate
You can
that.
easily separate art
Yeah.
from the artist
Yeah.
because it's not. I know
I,
wrong
by
term
no
to
means
use,
am I
but-
standing up for the
no,
man.
absolutely
Am I not?
But because you can take what he
He's
did
a
out of context and
deplorable
go,
man.
this is what these people have had help.
Yeah.
Regardless what you can take him out of the equation. And
But
it doesn't change
he
anything.
did bring money to people that needed it. He raised money for a certain. He may have counterbalanced that by doing all the abuse that he did, but without that, some people wouldn't have got the money.
I do think he's an anomaly.
He is. He definitely is.
Well, okay, I was about to say here's I don't know what equivalent's probably the wrong word to use as well, but another analogy for that same type of argument is the whole, was it Bristol University that teared down the statue of the slave owner
yeah.
because, was a slave owner, which
Yeah.
is horrible, horrendous.
Yeah.
But obviously pumped a lot of money into the university
Yeah.
and the local community. And again, this isn't a defence of what he did, because obviously owning people, regardless of race,
Yeah.
regardless of whatever,
It doesn't
is a
matter.
fucking horrible thing to
Yeah.
do, you scummy piece of shit. But, and this isn't a defence, I'll be surprised if this episode gets released, that's all I'm saying, is, they were the standards of the time. People, that was the culture of the time. And this isn't a defence of it,
No.
but it was the culture. So
They weren't considered wrong then.
yeah, I mean, looking back now, going fucking hell, it's horrendous. Because yes, it was fucking horrendous. It was horrible. But can you judge someone today? This has gone on quite an interesting tangent from Art of the Artist. But can you judge someone today by your standards when the standards were completely
Yeah,
different?
I get that.
The
Yeah.
the culture is completely different.
Yeah.
Can we be comparing someone to? And again, this isn't a defence of it in the slightest. Don't want these things to be taken out of fucking context. Last thing we want to do is cancelled while still trying to.
Only starting.
Yeah, but yeah, I feel it's like can you do that?
I get that, but then by the same token, some standards today have gone completely the opposite way.
And I'd say for the most part, rightly so. On subjects of race,
Yeah.
equality, inclusion, diversity. Absolutely so.
But people get judged for not understanding these days, and that's that shouldn't be something.
Well, that again, that's a problem of our society. I'd argue is that.
Well, yeah.
It's like with these whole statue things. That don't rip them down.
Yeah.
Put a plaque up and explain what's happening.
Who this person is,
'Cause
what
why is
they've
it-
done,
yeah,
everything they've done.
Yes, this person did horrible things, but they also did these things as well.
Yeah.
So, and that's not a defence of them.
No.
You know, like...
I feel like we're saying this is not a defence of anybody.
Okay,
quite a
right,
bit.
well, here's an interesting one to go. Churchill
Yeah.
is seen as a hero in this country. He was a nasty piece of work.
Yeah.
And if you go to Australia and New Zealand, he's a villain.
India.
And India.
And some people would say that he's as bad, if not worse, than Hitler in
Well,
some respects.
The deaths that came from the famine in India because of the blockade that he imposed, feeding his own soldiers as opposed to, all the food went to his soldiers as opposed to the however many
And
millions of people.
in Australia and New Zealand, he is not forgiven for Gallipoli.
No.
To this day,
Yeah.
he is seen as a villain and a pariah.
Yeah.
But again, it's that kind of, so have something to explain who
Yeah.
rather than going, he led us through the Second World War. It's like, yeah, but he's also not as cut and dry as that.
As much as I, as much as I am against, I don't particularly see Churchill the way a lot of other people do. I maintain that he was the right person for the job. I think
Desperate times call for desperate measures and all that. Yeah.
his misdeeds, in my opinion, far outweigh his good deeds. But from a patriotic point of view, and from at that time, given the circumstances that Britain were facing at that time, the right person for the job.
See, I'm glad in this respect that I'm quite ignorant to politics and stuff, because I don't really know what he did that was particularly wrong. I know he's supposed, we'll fight them on the beaches and all that sort of stuff. All these good points, as they always do. In England, they portray what good he did.
Yeah, of course he did. He's voted what greatest Britain of all time and stuff like that. Yeah.
But I'm kind of glad that I'm ignorant to it all and I don't understand it.
Well, let's make it slightly more not murderous. JK Rowling is probably another good, because I think we were going down a
Very dark route.
I mean, it's not a particularly light topic. Let's be
No,
honest.
it's not. But then again, Michael Jackson. Emma is a massive Michael Jackson fan, and she won't hear a bad word said about him. And I've got my own theories on to him. I think what he did was wrong. I don't think he knew what he was doing was wrong. He was
an argument to be made for that.
He was a child.
Yeah. If you're gonna grow up in the limelight like he did,
He never grew up.
I was not defending what he did, obviously.
As an adult. He never turned to become an adult. So he was in his... I'm, again, not defending him, not saying he did or didn't do these things. He may have done. Why settle out of court? That was my sticking point. If you haven't done something, why do you settle out of court?
No, that's not... If someone comes up to you, and then if you're from a poor background, someone comes up to you and goes, right, here's an amount of money you have never seen before in your life and you will never see again because you aren't in this world in that respect. Here's this amount of money that can change your life forever. And if you take this, you never say anything again. It'll change your life forever. A lot of people go, well, yeah, I can get a form of what we call justice, or I can
live easy for
live easy. I could. And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer to that question.
No.
I would also say that when it comes to the settle out of court thing that you got stuck on, from Michael Jackson's perspective, and certainly from his PR perspective, there's an argument to be made for wanting it to stay out of court, not because he might be found guilty, but because that remains next to his name, regardless of whether he's guilty or not.
Yeah, exactly.
I get that. But if you know in your heart of hearts that you have done nothing wrong, there is no amount of money in this world that would make me... If somebody accused me of something and I knew 1,000% I had not done it, there is no way that I would...
Oh, I see what you mean. Sorry, I thought you meant why did...
No, why did Michael Jackson settle out of court?
Sorry, I thought you meant why did the people accept the money?
That's the bit.
Oh, I get. All right, I get what you said. Sorry, I was me misunderstanding what you meant.
I fully believe that those kids were in his bed. I fully agree with playing. Playing is the term that is
banded around.
Yeah. However, he envisions playing is a different story, and I don't profess to know which way. But if he was absolutely certain that he hadn't done this thing, why settle? regardless of whether it's going to go against his name forever or not. If he settles out of court, that makes him look more guilty, and therefore he looks worse. Oh, he settled out of court because that's the bit with me.
Because if it
sit
did
right.
go to court, yeah, he might be absolutely, and he knows in his own mind, absolutely innocent of doing these things. No matter the level of his innocence, if it goes to court and it comes out in court some of the facts that he was in bed with children, people make their own minds up, regardless of
people
what.
make their own minds up anyway.
Well, yeah,
He settles out of court.
yeah.
He
might be guilty of nothing more than just playing with these kids like he would as a child.
Yeah.
If it goes to court, it becomes public knowledge.
Yeah. But I suppose,
It's a tough.
What has JK Rowling done? Because I'm oblivious to.
Okay, so JK, it's the whole. I think it's
exclusionary radical feminist.
I think it started off with her actually voicing her own opinion, but now it's got to the point where I feel like she's going, well, this gets me relevant. This, I'm going to keep saying
she absolutely knows how to play.
Oh, it keeps her name relevant. It keeps her name a bit like, I don't want to compare these people too much because one's talented and one isn't. One's Lawrence Fox, who will deliberately say contrary things and deliberately say outrageous things because it gets him back in the newspapers. I kind of feel J.K. Rowling's doing a little bit of that as well.
Absolutely.
But I feel like this is an example where people are successfully separating art from the artist.
Yeah.
I know. I do know people. I've talked to some people who have gone, well, I'm never reading Harry Potter again. I'm never watching Harry Potter. I'm never giving any money to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. I'm never even going to go to Orlando and stuff like that because it's money back in J.K. Rowling's pocket.
By the same token, there's not that in Disney films. There's no gay relationships there, are no.
They're starting to, but that's
starting. But nobody's going. I mean, all right, Apple Dumpling Gang is a whole different thing. But have you not seen Apple Dumpling Gang?
What?
Have you not seen Apple Dumpling Gang?
No. What the fuck are you talking about?
Or what's the other one? The
Song of the South.
Song of the South.
Oh, I know that one.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that one.
But nobody cancelling Disney.
Because Disney are very, very good at hiding these things.
They are.
Disney are also good at jumping on the latest sort of. People consider this to be a decent thing to do now, so we'll involve this in as.
And I'm not saying people should cancel anything because I still don't. No, I don't know. I feel like we've gone on a very different tangent to the start of the.
Well, no, because
art from the artist.
Certainly, J.K. Rowling creates art.
Yeah,
and she has an art form which is her writing, so it's relevant. It's definitely relevant. It's part of a wider discussion.
It is, but one that I don't think we can ever do justice to in this form.
I think as well. It might be, as Sam's already mentioned it. We've got to be aware of the fact that we are three white guys.
Yeah, we're not fully qualified to talk on a lot of these points. Okay, right. Well, here's another person. Probably, I'd say possibly end on this person, and this isn't why I had the idea to talk about this episode and why I wanted to do it. But is Chris Benoit.
Okay.
The fact that what he did at the end of his life, for whatever reason, whatever reason it happened, he did horrendous things. Mm. But can we, as wrestling fans, still watch his matches?
Should we clarify what Chris Benoit did?
So Chris Benoit, for those who don't know, so in 2007 he no-showed an event, was acting very strangely.
He said Eddie Guerrero and.
Oh no! No, Eddie was dead by this point.
Oh no, it was Dean Malenko.
It was Dean Malenko and Chavo who sent messages to, and when they went to investigate, they sent the police around to investigate, and when they first found the house, they found that all three, so Chris, his wife Nancy, and their son Daniel, were all dead.
I remember the thing that alerted. What did the thing that alerted Chavo? He said the dogs are in the backyard.
He had several messages saying the dogs are in the yard. And that was a very surreal thing. Yeah. It turned out the reason they thought he sent those messages was basically telling Chavo, the dogs are in the yard, be wary when you come round, because Chris knew they would not be found.
Yeah.
So when they found the bodies, they were like, oh, okay, right, obviously horrible. And then after further investigation, within 24 hours, they discovered that Chris had killed both his wife and his son, and then hung himself. So horrendous things to happen, regardless of what brain injuries he had, whatever drug misuse he was doing, whatever things. I'm not saying these excuse what happened, but they explain it.
He was also suffering the loss of his friend, wasn't he?
Well, yeah, he never got over the loss of Eddie Guerrero,
which again doesn't excuse it.
No, not at all. But that potentially tipped him over the edge. He never.
But the potential brain injuries from concussion, the steroid abuse, the missing your best friend.
He never got over that. So we as wrestling fans, I consider myself quite a big wrestling fan and was a relatively big fan of Chris Benoit as well, because of what he did for the industry. Can we knowingly watch these matches, especially with Chris Benoit, who would take unprotected chair shots to the head? You know, which is something they don't do in WWE, at least. They don't do anymore.
No.
On the back of this, really.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, Benoit's...
There was that and Chris Nowinski, weren't they?
I mean, Benoit famously was also one of the few wrestlers who would happily, well, not happily, but would take an unprotected chair shot to the back of the head.
Yeah.
Which is horrendous to watch, even at
But
the time.
he was very much in the same mindset of Dynamite Kid, who would do the same things.
Look how messed up Dynamite Kid
Exactly.
is. So can we knowingly watch his matches, knowing what he went on to do? You know, the potential harm he was doing himself, which then led to said event.
I think Ian Watkins was born with that. Nothing that happened in his career changed him to think that what he was going to do was a fucking spot-on idea. Let's go and do that. Chris Benoit, alright, getting unprotected chair shots will cause concussion. Steroid abuse, because you need to be the bigger guy, will cause abuse. Again, I don't think you can exclude what he brought.
You can't
to
deny
wrestling.
the impact he's had on the wrestling community for what
So-
he did.
I think that's it as well.
So I don't think you can.
It's weird with Chris Benoit because he's obviously he's gone, so we'll never have to be in a position where we have to accept
What happened?
Who he
new,
is.
new stuff
Chris,
from him.
yeah.
If you like. Back to sort of like Ailstone, for example. They've been a thing recently where group chats have been leaked and Chris has been revealed as being
It's Chris Bell's not Chris Benoit.
as having very and this is kind of a weird sort of way, and it's only something I've read very recently, literally within the last sort of 2 or 3 days. I read that it maybe is acceptable to separate art from a disgraced artist, provided that you're doing it in keeping with what you liked about the band. So, for example, Ailstone, I can still listen to the albums up to, say, No Grave at the latest.
Yeah.
And enjoy them. I reckon I could hear, Swashbuckle live and really enjoy it. But everything that's been released since that moment leaves a bad taste. And although the newest album's not as bad as the album that came before it, I still listen to it with that in the back of my mind. And it's weird. I can't say, for example, yes, I can separate art from artists, because when it comes to Witch Tripper, absolutely not. I'll never listen to them again. And if they come on accidentally, they'll get switched off. But Ailstone...
So you actively can't listen to
I
them
will
anymore.
not listen to them again.
I mean, it's hard. You can't find Witch Stripper stuff anymore anyway. They've deleted their own presence by the looks of it.
Have they?
Yeah.
Which is as they should. Because obviously Chris and Drummond, he did want to be disassociated.
Yeah, like Lost Prophets. That's the problem.
They did start a new band though, didn't
They
they?
did. That was called Phoenix or Rock Ashes. That's the thing. You're now tarnishing everyone with the same brush because of what one person did.
Yeah,
I don't think that's fair on everyone else in that group.
And so As I Lay Dying's a good one. Tim Lambesis. So he's obviously done time for conspiracy to have his wife assassinated.
Yeah.
He got in touch with what he thought was a hit person. Turned out to be a member of FBI, which was a really silly thing to do if you ask me. But like such as Austrian Death Machine and As I Lay Dying, I could quite happily listen to them now and not worry in the slightest about what he did. One, because it was the world's biggest fuck up, and it's like, I laughed at him for that.
But his intention
Was to have
Was
a kill,
still there.
which was wrong. But the amount of stuff he said he's undergone rehabilitation. This is going back to what you said about, do people deserve a second chance if they are genuinely repentant?
I believe they do. Okay, there was some, like the whole Ian Watkins thing. I think there's no coming back from that. But
he's not genuinely repentant. And I don't
that's what I
think he
mean.
Will be.
That's what. But even if he said, "Oh, I'm really sorry," it's like, yeah, but what you did. It's like
Actions speak louder than words, and nothing he's done so far.
Yeah.
Whereas Tim Lambesis, there is. There's
He's back as I Lay Dying, isn't he?
yeah.
Was he that with them? Yeah. But here's what I'd say. But does it not mean as much to you because As I Lay Dying didn't mean that much to you, whereas Witch Tripper meant a fuck ton? So is it the fact you feel
But I also
personally betrayed by what happened?
I also think
For Witch Tripper, at least.
it's tough because it's ranking bad things that people do, but I think what Richie did, Witch Tripper, was worse than what Tim Lambesis did.
but he carried out.
I don't think you could. I know what you're trying to say, but I don't think you can compare them. I genuinely don't think you can. I get what you're trying to say, but I don't think these two things are comparable.
I think there's a difference between putting the statement's a wrong word, but to use Phil Anselmo, putting out that statement of the white power salute and actually doing. If he put that out and then gone and started off a neo-Nazi group or whatever, fucking wholeheartedly, yeah, those two things are related. Tim Lambesis tried to get his wife killed.
But he spoke a lot recently about his mental health struggles during that time, and would he have done it if he weren't struggling? And again, I'm not saying that he shouldn't have been punished and done his time, what have you, but it's the statements that he's released since that actually make me think. You know, I'm not saying he's learning. I'm saying that he's learned. I'm saying he's learning. This might be a journey. So
if someone's genuinely repentant,
it strikes me as repentant. You don't know the guy, and for us little people in our position, sat in a cabin talking about these things, we just don't know.
No.
It comes down to as simple as that. We don't know. I think in these situations, if you too strongly believe one way or the other, you leave yourself open to be sort of targeted for that strong belief one way or the other. We don't know. It's as simple as that. So why would you cast your vote?
Yeah,
so
I don't think
the fence is a lovely place to be.
I don't think that, like we've said, that we can.
We're not the people to make.
We're not the people.
No, we're
to
not.
And it's at the end of the day, what we've said so far is our opinions, but without knowing the facts, we can't really put anything major to it. And while I might not agree with, I might not be able to separate Phil from his actions. I can separate Ian from his actions. Do you know what I mean? Like, other way around, whatever. I can't separate Ian from his actions, but I can separate Phil from his actions.
I think as a bottom line, it can't be done without at least being aware of what they've done.
Yeah.
You couldn't put, none of us could now put anything on by Hailstone or Lost Prophets or Michael Jackson or whatever, and not have that somewhere in your mind.
No, it's forever associated. It's forever associated.
So I think it's impossible to separate. Even people such as Emma, who absolutely loves Michael Jackson, it'll be on her mind.
Yeah.
She'll have her opinions and she'll think absolutely not, but it'll be there. Even that in itself, that's not separated, is it?
It's separating, but you can in theory make a disconnect to make yourself able to enjoy, whether it's music, books, films, whatever, to make you enjoy, appreciate what it is, regardless of who these people are. I think is
I do think it depends on what the person did and to what level that person did it. Once you find that out, but again, it's an awareness of.
But again, going back to music, I think the one that we all because Lost Prophets is a bit of an interesting one because it was a band and there's some music. But I think we can all agree on Gary Glitter. And you know, he's persona non grata within the music industry because of what he did. Well, in this country at least, I know he's still played in other countries, but in this country, you don't get Gary Glitter. You know, he's, and that, as a nation, we've all gone nope. And I think that, you know, because he was one person and he was so associated with his brand. You can't separate them.
I think it's been a really interesting episode.
We could have gone for another few hours, I think. And if it wasn't for the heat, I think we would have done.
And not just that, but also, as we've said, we are not the people qualified. This is just something that I think, as an episode, it's probably quite unusual for us to have something that's quite as important as it is. And I feel like it's important that we do discuss these issues, but we're also fully aware of our position within discussing about.
And I think you've got a Witch Tripper, we've got Benoit. There is an affinity to this topic. I mean, all right, Phil Anselmo is in there, and we all like Pantera to a certain degree. I'll probably like him more than the rest of you, but there's an affinity to this topic and whether we can or can't do what we art from the artist. So I do think that it is, although it's a hard slog of an episode and.
It's not necessarily a fun, but it's not meant to be. And
it's not meant to be.
That's the idea as well. We sort of very much tipped in favour of sort of more light-hearted themes and discussions and what have you, stuff that don't necessarily offend anybody except me when we're talking about Trivium. So, I think the understanding we have on this, it's probably a nice way to finish off. So, so all that's left to say is you've been great, you've been Cabin Night, and good night.